so satisfied, I'm on my way.
Take a straight and stronger course to the corner of your life. Make the White Queen run so fast, she hasn't got time to make you wife. 'Cause it's time in time with your time, and this news is captured. For the Queen to use, move me on to any black square. Use me anytime you want. Just remember that the goal is for us all to capture all we want. Yeah. Don't surround yourself with yourself. Move on back to squares. Send an instant comment to me. Initial it with loving care. Yourself. 'Cause it's time in time with your time, and this news is captured. For the Queen to use.
Yes, we can.
Former President Barack Obama, the great deceiver, instilled so much hope in the public.
Are you ready to go?
Yet, as time unraveled, more and more of his word became a lie, and a setup for the deep state to roll out a massive depopulation agenda was further established. One that would have carried on had Hillary won the 2016 election. The Georgia Guidestones had been set in stone for this Freemason agenda, but over the last 7 years the agenda had been destroyed. Hillary was meant to win. At least the deep state had rigged the election so she would, but they didn't realize how much rigging they'd need to do. Because Trump became so popular, they lost. The corrupt DC establishment had lost touch with reality.
Thank you.
And figured because they had the media in their pocket, they truly thought they would win. Despite the lawsuit with Fox News, Dominion has a proven track record of voter fraud. See Venezuela and how the people reacted when their election was rigged. Or watch Pervywood 9, Volume 2, where I cover the 2020 election rigging in explicit detail. Trump is still commander-in-chief, despite the 2020 election results. And the clues are left in military laws and orders, such as the Military Justice Act, Executive Order 13818, 13848, 13912, and many more. When Trump became president, he would need the aid of the world to eradicate the swamp effectively. And to get this sort of power, he used whitemail in order to give corrupt countries and individuals the chance to do the right thing. We had everything. All the documents to prove the human rights violations they had committed, including voter fraud. There has been so much confusion in the truther community regarding Donald Trump. Is he a white hat? Is he a black hat? Are we all being deceived by the great deceiver? What do you think Obama was? The moment presidential power was lost by the deep state in D.C., the military, the Alliance of World Generals, and UN Security Council understood they had 4 years to set the groundwork for the plan that would ultimately drain the swamp and free the world from a future of tyranny under a one-world government. What so many failed to realize or give importance to are the details that show exactly how Trump, through executive orders and laws, took the necessary steps to protect our democratic republic and, more importantly, expose and eradicate the deep state that had been growing like a cancer throughout the world. The U.S. was placed under the crown with the 1871 Organic Act. The bar was quickly established thereafter, and what we know as the U.S. Democratic Republic became a corporation. What the military and Trump are doing now is bankrupting and dismantling that corporation. It may or may not have crossed your path, the famous capitulation tour, where Trump toured the world and met with every superpower, and was given a royal display of submission by each one. What would make each superpower submit to Donald Trump? Well, we had everything. Black hats use blackmail, and white hats use whitemail, where the latter uses information to force people into wrongdoing. The former uses information to give the chance of right doing. So what if I told you Donald Trump is still Commander-in-Chief? I can hear loads of people thinking, of course he is. The election was rigged. You are correct, but it goes much deeper than that. I can also hear a crowd of you thinking, well, no, he's not president. And if he is, explain everything. Explain Biden's presidency. Explain the vaccine. Explain why this is happening. There is a big difference between president and Commander-in-Chief. This film is for believers, and primarily for the doubters. The information to be presented can be verified via military executive orders and laws. That means this film isn't purely theoretical. Its majority is based in fact. It's based upon documentation that derives from .gov and .mil websites. This allows viewers to continue their research after the seeds of this film have been planted. Don't just blindly believe what is to be shown here. Let it guide you. By doing your own research, you will earn the reward of understanding and will be better able to explain this to your peers. And the hope you had forgotten will return in greater strength than ever before. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. By the end, you will realize why they say this is the greatest show on earth. To really understand current events, it's important to first get a grasp on the past. The Organic Act of 1871. On February 21st, 1871, the 41st Congress passed legislation entitled An Act to Provide a Government for the District of Columbia. This is known as Act of 1871. By this action, and with no constitutional authority, a separate form of government and constitution was created for the 10 square miles of land known as the District of Columbia, or Washington, D.C. Incorporated. The original U.S. Constitution was entitled the Constitution for the United States of America. The Act of 1871 changed that title to read the Constitution of the United States of America. By changing the title and the capitalization of the Constitution, the people were removed from this new Constitution. This new Constitution serves only for the corporation of the United States and not for the people of America. The people now have no rights or freedoms, no ownership of property, no right to travel, no right to marry, no right to do business. They are only debt slaves who must serve the corporation. Slaves have no rights. only privileges and permission to live on their master's property. Should they try in any way to use the corporate constitution, they will be charged with criminal trespass because they are not a party to this private contract entitled the Constitution of the United States of America. Our Constitution explicitly states that no citizen shall pay any direct tax to the federal government. Why are the citizens in all our sovereign states forced to pay federal income tax, which is collected by a foreign corporation of England called the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS? Our Constitution explicitly states that our currency is to be backed fully by gold and silver, and that our banking system is to be under control of the Treasury of the United States of America and the Congress. Why is it that I cannot receive gold or silver coin for my currency at my bank? Why does our paper money say Federal Reserve note and not gold or silver certificate as it once did? Why are our banks called Federal Reserve banks and not U.S. Treasury banks? Why is the Federal Reserve bank system owned by a British foreign corporation and controlled by the 13 most wealthy families of our world?
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Do you understand this is why you are charged fees to travel, to marry, to do business, or even visit corporate parks? Do you understand why you must pay income tax, bank interest, and lose all your collateral in foreclosure? Do you understand why you lose in court? Why your family has no privacy or security? And why the feds are all over the 50 states? The deep state blossomed in Washington, D.C. For over 100 years, it's become a nest bed for highly corrupt, power-seeking individuals, all working for the 13 most wealthy families in the world. This is the swamp. Draining the swamp that's been growing for over 100 plus years requires a multi-layered operation that in order for it to be pulled off, it can't look obvious. It's done behind the scenes and requires a lot of thought, planning, organization, and most importantly, time. Why is it taking so long? Department of Defense, The Law of War Manual, June 12, 2015. The Law of War Manual is the Department of Defense's war manual. It was signed on June 12, 2015. It's a combination of military and federal lawyers who took the Lieber Code of 1863, Geneva Conventions, Hague Conventions, Nuremberg Trials, the Law of War manuals from the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, and Australia, and all the strengths of those to strengthen the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is military law. The Golden Escalator. In the moments before his announcement, Trump came down the Golden Escalator at Trump Tower prior to announcing his run for president. What are the odds of that? Just 4 days after the Law of War Manual was passed. The Military Justice Act of 2016 was a Supreme Court clarifying military laws and courts are separate from civil laws and courts. It clarifies military personnel are different from civil. Federal Continuity Directive 1, January 17, 2017. The Federal Continuity Directive 1 was signed 3 days before Donald Trump took office. Looking into the appendix, it defines devolution and reconstitution. To help you understand further, we must understand devolution, also known as reconstitution. Devolution. Devolution is a component of continuity planning that establishes procedures to transfer statutory authority and responsibilities from an organization's primary operating staff and facilities to another designated staff and one or more facilities for the purpose of sustaining essential functions. Devolution may be temporary or may endure for an extended period. A devolution plan is activated upon the threat of or in response to a catastrophic emergency that either renders the organization's primary leadership and operating staff unavailable or leaves them incapable of sustaining essential functions from primary facilities. Reconstitution. Reconstitution is the final phase of a continuity event, the process by which surviving and/or replacement personnel resume normal operations and may occur at any designated location that provides the staff, facilities, and systems necessary to sustain essential functions. Just prior to the signing of Federal Continuity Directive 2 on June 13, 2017, the directive that would actually implement the continuity of government and so much more, Trump embarked on an international tour, famously known as the Capitulation Tour. Saudi Arabia, the sword dance, May 20th, 2017. For Trump to be the only U.S. president to be involved in a Saudi Arabia sword dance is pure symbolism. This was symbolic of going to war together. The history and significance of sword dancing is important to note. The most common Arda in Saudi, called the Najdi Arda, initially performed by Arab warriors in the central Najd region of Saudi before meeting their enemies on the battlefield. Sword dancing was a way for the men to display their weaponry and show their heroic spirit. The Najdi Arda also recalls the battles led by King Abdulaziz Al Saud, the founder of Saudi Arabia. Trump came to Saudi with folders displaying the military had everything on their corruption. The only way out of their heinous crimes was to bend the knee to the U.S. and to capitulate, a vow to bring down the New World Order together. And what better way of showing their submission than with an honorable sword dance? Having Saudi Arabia on board meant the first side of the deep state pyramid had collapsed. 2 days later, Trump would go to Israel to do the same. Israel, May 22nd, 2017. On Monday, May 22nd, President Trump arrived in Israel and was welcomed by President Rivlin. Shortly after arriving, President Trump and Rivlin delivered remarks. Most importantly, President Rivlin proclaimed,
America is back in the area. America is back again.
Israel publicly submitted by allowing the U.S. to move our embassy to Jerusalem and with our military protection. And to this day, Saudi Arabia and Israel are still getting along. Make note that Trump visited the Wailing Wall just prior to Israel moving their embassy. If you've ever heard people falsely claim Trump a Jesuit, this is where the false interpretation comes from. Many researchers are short-sighted. It makes them lazy, and they pause their ambitious research at this wall. Pun intended. They judge the trees, but not the forest, therefore misunderstanding. This was a massive goal in the capitulation tour. What comes next, just 2 days later, is the most important stop of the entire tour, the Vatican. Trump left Israel and flew straight to Rome, May 24th, 2017. Pope Francis would now be shown concrete evidence of human trafficking provided by the new coalition of US, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. Red lines were drawn in the sand at Rome. The outcome? The Pope submitted to the US publicly in this famous picture.
The Pope wasn't happy. You should find the picture of him visiting the Pope. It took 650 planes to remove our gold from the Vatican Bank.
Think he's always frowning like that? Have a look when Pope Francis was visited by Obama. That same day, Trump flew to visit NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the EU, the European Union. May 25th, 2017. The EU is a unique and essential partner for NATO, as the two organizations share a majority of members, have common values, and face similar threats and challenges. EU leaders publicly submitted when Trump walked in late like a boss. Because now, we had everything. Trump truly was their boss. Both the EU and NATO now realized they have it all, and were instructed to stand down on Brexit and pay more for NATO. Now with the Middle East and European powers of the pyramid submitting, a monumental move forward could happen. That move was the implementation of the continuation of government. Federal Continuity Directive 2, June 13th, 2017. FCD2 outlines requirements and provides checklists and resources to assist federal executive branch departments and agencies in identifying and assessing their essential functions through a risk-based process, and in identifying candidate primary mission essential functions that support the national essential functions. In short, FCD2 provides the implementation protocols for the continuation of government and so much more. Just 4 months later, after getting wind of what Trump was doing, the deep state cabal tried to strike back. The Las Vegas Massacre, October 1st, 2017.
In a matter of seconds, a country music festival turned tragic, a storm of gunfire raining down upon an innocent crowd.
Q-Post 117 implied that they tried to take out the new Saudi Arabian Crown Prince bin Salman, who was a good guy in this film. The evil villain? The former Saudi Arabia Crown Prince Al-Walid. It was during the Las Vegas battle that he was neutralized. Al-Walid just happened to control Twitter. Now, we control Twitter, or X. Contrary to what I believed in the past, this points to Elon being a white hat. It's pretty obvious when you pay attention to what he's saying.
Elon, you tweeted this thing about George Soros. I'm looking for it because I want to make sure I quote it properly. But I mean, you know what you wrote. But you basically.
It reminds me of Magneto. This is like, calm down, people. This is not like made a case out of it.
You also you said he wants to erode the very fabric of civilization, and Soros hates humanity. Like, when you do something like that, do you? Yeah,
I think that's true. That's my opinion.
Okay, but why share it? Why share it? Especially because, why share it when people who buy Teslas may not agree with you, advertisers on Twitter may not agree with you? Why not just say, hey, I think this. You can tell me. We can talk about it over there. You can tell your friends. But why share it widely?
This is freedom of speech. I'm allowed to say what I want.
You absolutely are. But I'm trying to understand why you do, because you have to know it puts you in the middle of the partisan divide in the country. It makes you a lightning rod for criticism. Do you like that? People today saying he's an anti-Semite. I don't think you are.
No, I'm definitely. I'm like a pro-Semite, if anything.
I believe that probably is the case.
Yes.
Why would you even introduce the idea then that would be the case?
Look, we don't want to make this a George Soros interview.
No, God, no. I don't want to at all. But I'm trying. Even came up though in the annual meeting. Do your tweets hurt the company? Are there Tesla owners who say, I don't agree with his political position and I know it because he shares so much of it? Or are there advertisers on Twitter that Linda Yaccarino will come and say, you got to stop, man. Or, I can't get these ads because of some of the things you tweet.
I'm reminded of there's a scene in The Princess Bride, great movie, where he confronts the person who killed his father, and he says, offer me money, offer me power, I don't care.
The Las Vegas massacre was a key event, as Trump saved bin Salman's life, as intel had shown Prince Al-Walid was planning to assassinate him. As we mentioned before, we had everything. Now bin Salman owes his life to Trump, Now the capitulation tour would continue as Trump made his way to Asia for a 13-day, 5-nation tour. Japan, November 4th, 2017. The effect of Trump's visit had the Japanese emperor removed. This was the first in Japanese history. Just 1 month after Trump's visit, the Japanese cabinet finalized their decision and suggested that April 2019 would be a good date for Japanese Emperor Akihito's official abdication.
A sacred ceremony to mark the transition to a new era for the world's oldest continuous monarchy. With 2 of the 3 mysterious imperial regalia, a sword and a jewel, the emperor gave his final speech.
Emperor Akihito was abdicated due to failure of his duties as emperor. And the symbolism of Japan's submission was when they allowed Trump to become the first ever U.S. president to hand out the sumo champion trophy. Alas, another old house family removed from control. South and North Korea, November 7th, 2017. Trump left Japan and flew to South Korea. Just weeks prior to arrival, the nuclear research mountain in North Korea collapsed, killing their nuclear scientist.
During the latest test in September 2017, a bomb believed to have an explosive yield of 100 kilotons set off a powerful explosion. It caused an initial 6.3 magnitude tremor and triggered several more earthquakes in the weeks that followed.
Was this to remove the nuclear threat? Was it to intimidate Kim Jong-un? Could it have been both? What Trump said in his speech to the South Korean Assembly pairs well with what happened in North Korea just weeks prior.
This is a very different administration than the United States has had in the past. Today, I hope I speak not only for our countries, but for all civilized nations. When I say to the North, do not underestimate us and do not try us. I also have come here to this peninsula to deliver a message directly to the leader of the North Korean dictatorship. The weapons you are acquiring are not making you safer. They are putting your regime in grave danger. Every step you take down this dark path increases the peril you face.
It would be only 18 months later that Trump would become the first U.S. president to cross the border into North Korea.
At one of the most militarized borders on Earth, an historic handshake.
Good to see you again. I've never expected to meet you at this place.
A US president, a North Korean leader, and an extraordinary invitation.
If Your Excellency take a step forward, you will be the first US president to cross this line.
And Donald Trump didn't disappoint. Not just stepping, but positively striding into history books, the first sitting American president to meet a leader in the North.
China, November 8th to 10th, 2017. Trump then flies to China at the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping to meet and dine in the Forbidden City. Trump became the first foreign leader to ever dine in the Forbidden City since the founding of modern China. This is a massive act of submission. Remember, Xi Jinping had already visited Trump at Mar-a-Lago for a few days in spring 2017. It's evident China wanted to rid itself of the deep state as well. Two days later, on November 12th, 2017, Trump visits Vietnam. Trump then heads to Vietnam to get Southeast Asian leaders to submit, including Singapore and the Philippines. Trump is placed in the honor position to the right of the Vietnam leader as proof of submission. At the core of it all, it's about stopping trafficking. Philippines submit. On the Council of Foreign Relations website, Joshua Kurlansik writes on Trump and Philippines president having a bromance. He points to Trump making human rights a low priority in Southeast Asia. Joshua writes, "The Philippine president seems to appreciate a U.S. leader who has made human rights a low priority in Southeast Asia and who thus has mostly ignored any criticism of Duterte's undermining of the rule of law. Indeed, the Trump administration has downplayed human rights in all aspects of U.S. foreign policy, including bilateral meetings with foreign leaders and funding for rights and democracy programs within the U.S. government, among other areas." Trump extended his stay to attend another summit, and this marked the end of the Asia tour. And with no coincidence, the Trump administration executive orders, particularly on human rights violations, appeared just 1 month later. Donald John Trump would declare a national emergency with respect to serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world. Before we explore Executive Order 13818, it's best to take a minute to understand what an executive order actually is. Being that only 32% of Americans can accurately name all three branches of government, knowing the importance and meaning of an executive order is imperative, as the coming executive orders of late 2017 and 2018 and beyond are the framework, the blueprint, that has allowed monumental action to take place in taking down the deep state.
The of the pen. With just their signatures, U.S. presidents can issue executive orders, documents that direct the actions of the federal government. They have the force of law. There are limits on the president's ability to issue orders. The order must specify what authority is used to make it, either the Constitution or a law. Executive orders can be overturned. Courts can rule them unconstitutional. Congress can refuse to spend money to carry out an order. Congress can pass legislation to invalidate them. Future presidents can undo an order by issuing a new one. All U.S. presidents except one, William Harrison, who died after 1 month in office, have issued at least one executive order. And some executive orders make history. In issues large and small, presidents use executive orders to shift priorities and change the way the federal government does business.
Executive Order 13818, December 20th, 2017. By Executive Order 13818, the President declared a national emergency with respect to serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world, and pursuant to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is 50 U.S. Code 1701, took related steps to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. A national emergency is a situation in which a government is empowered to perform actions not normally permitted. The 1976 National Emergencies Act implemented various legal requirements regarding emergencies declared by the President of the United States. Setting an executive order with a national emergency is a very big deal. This executive order was solely based at its core a means to stop the massive human rights violations around the world. As the year ends, Trump begins 2018 with a continuation of the capitulation tour. Davos, Switzerland, January 26, 2018. As we enter 2018, the world leaders understand the plan, and average U.S. citizens are waking up to Q. Trump flies into the lion's den at Davos, Switzerland, with Soros present. All the largest global CEOs and bankers submit to Trump at Davos, and you can see Trump has been given the seat of honor right in the center. The CEOs and bankers understood what you understand now. They knew the U.S. was under military control, and to survive, they had to play ball. Trump stated, "The world is witnessing the resurgence of a strong and prosperous America." And just 2 months after, on a Trump-approved submission trip, Mohammed bin Salman heads to Silicon Valley, a valley where Saudi Prince Al-Walid no longer held superiority. Mohammed bin Salman tours Silicon Valley, March 20th, 2018. With the takedown of puppeteer Al-Walid, Crown Prince bin Salman goes on a Trump-approved submission trip to all the CEOs formerly owned and controlled by the Saudi Arabia side of the pyramid: Google, Apple, Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft. Donald Trump has set the chess table properly by assembling a worldwide task force that would essentially team up with the U.S. military to drain the swamp. As Mohammed bin Salman set Silicon Valley straight, Trump came back to the White House and got busy. From January to December of 2018, Donald Trump would publish 37 executive orders, from Executive Order 13820 to Executive Order 13856. The most important order would be 13848. We'll get to that very soon. Trump invites Macron to the White House. Macron is married to one of the deep state, and he worked for the Rothschilds. Yet, he completely submitted to Trump in these photos. Trump has it all, and these leaders are being tasked with cleaning up their deep states, or Trump will declass it all. The Queen submits. July 14th, 2018. The Queen submitted to Trump when she allowed him to walk in front of her during a review of her honor guard. Then, she placed Trump under her sigil in the center position. Then, she had him sit in Winston Churchill's chair. Total submission photos. As Trump continues on his global submission tour, he visits Norway to meet Putin. July 25th, 2018. In that famous summit, Putin throws Trump a soccer ball and says, "The ball is in your court." Absolute submission. The entire world is playing ball now. Now for the most important executive order, 13848, September 12th, 2018. Election interference. It was written 2 months before any election under Donald Trump. It's current and active till September 2024. That's right, Joe Biden has extended this executive order. This is a clue that the president is acting under Commander-in-Chief. This executive order traps all governors, attorneys, generals, Secretary of States, judges, and lawyers for not upholding and implying and enforcing the law. Executive Order 13848 carries a national emergency within it. Keep in mind, this was signed 2 months before any election under Donald Trump. It was 2 years before the presidential election of 2020 and 2 months before the midterms, meaning the only evidence of voter fraud was 2016 and prior. This explains why the Hillary camp, the DNC, and the Mockingbird media all sang the same tune, "Trump won't win." Executive Order 13848 specifically says, although there has been no evidence of a foreign power altering the outcome or vote tabulation in any United States election, foreign powers have historically sought to exploit America's free and open political system. Executive Order 13848 defines who it isn't referring to. Therefore, it defines who it is. If not foreign, it's domestic. It's referring to the Washington establishment. It's referring to the deep state, the cabal, the swamp. Trump now takes the capitulation tour to South America, Argentina, November 29th, 2018. Trump corrals all the global bankers together and forces their submission. Then, Trump walks off stage, leaving the Argentinian president all alone, showing Argentina's submission to Trump. Argentina is a trafficking hideout. It's why the Obamas frequently visit. 3 weeks later, Trump invites Brazil's Bolsonaro to the White House. March 19th, 2019. Trump welcomes a new friend to the table when Brazil elects their version of Trump with Bolsonaro as president. Many see the submission with his hands clasped, and quickly after his visit, Bolsonaro arrests Oprah's best friend, then accused trafficker, now guilty, John of God. Theresa May, May 24th, 2019. Remember when Theresa May cried and resigned to allow Boris Johnson, who's a Trump supporter, to take over as Prime Minister of England? May owes her life to Trump. Intel hinted that Trump alerted May to a hit on her by the deep state.
So much to be optimistic about. I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
She's crying because they were going to kill her, and she was saved by Trump. Space Force, established December 20th, 2019. The U.S. Space Force is responsible for organizing, training, and equipping Guardians to conduct global space operations that enhance the way our joint and coalition forces fight, while also offering decision-makers military options to achieve national objectives. Enhance the way our joint and coalition forces fight? This sounds like the branch of the military responsible for worldwide military operatives. Certainly something that was established on Trump's capitulation tour. It's key to note that Russia was the first nation to have a space force, and the Russians are known for gathering intel. It is said that Space Force was active in collecting all the election fraud that occurred during the 2020 election. After the onslaught of attempted indictments on Trump, there is now a leg to stand on legally for Trump to showcase the data they have that proves the election was rigged. Before Trump ends his international visits, he heads to India. Trump visits India, February 25th, 2020. Trump now turns his focus to India. Their leader Modi submits publicly to Trump with these hugs. He also clasped his hands together in this photo to show his hands were tied as he submitted. These comms are important to note, and they're very symbolic. Trump was greeted with a stadium of 100,000 Indians chanting,
Namaste, Trump! Namaste, Trump! Namaste, Trump!
Trump ends his international visits with India and immediately focused on the battlefront back home. This is when the deep state released their Ukrainian bioweapon. COVID-19, March 13th, 2020. Chaos and division equals power acquisition. COVID was a biological chemical attack. It was going to be used with Hillary as president. They created a problem they already had a solution to. When you know Bush Jr. wrote presidential directives for federal continuity, and even more damning, when you apply that Obama wrote an executive order in 2009 that specifically says, establishing federal capability for the timely provision of medical countermeasures following a biological attack. Along with mainstream news sources, Bill Gates talking about pandemics and vaccines in 2012, it's very easy to see what was going to happen. How it happened is what you need to understand. The military and World Alliance of Generals gave all the Washington establishment via Congress the chance to do what was right for humanity, but they didn't. They had their rats in Ukraine relinquish these attacks. It wasn't China. There's multiple cities in Ukraine where biochemical labs are, those that Russia's bombing, with the name China attached to the Ukrainian spelling. It all ties in and makes sense when you apply the timelines and facts. On March 13th, 2020, Trump declared a nationwide emergency under the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, authorizing assistance administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, the first known instance of FEMA serving in such a role for a public health incident. So, Russia is just annihilating and bombing Ukraine for no reason, or just because they want their land back? And that requires this kind of list from your taxpayer money? It doesn't make sense. Instead, if you flip the scenario and apply the facts, it makes plenty sense. Obama wrote 3 executive orders for Ukraine in 2014. VP Biden made 7 trips in 7 months to Ukraine in 2014. In 2014, there was not a traditional election held in March. It was called a snap election, when Poroshenko won the first round and there wasn't a second. Obama congratulated him 2 days after that election. Ukraine broke the CIS treaty in 2018 with Russia. Putin hands the soccer ball to Commander-in-Chief Trump in 2018. Russia doesn't participate in the World Cup 2022. Not participating in one of their most loved sports? The soccer ball represents the ball is in your court, Mr. President. You tell me what you want me to do. Commander-in-Chief Trump never started any wars. He got Russia to bomb these Nazi-ran biochemical labs. The only Ukrainians fighting in Russia are Nazi soldiers, defending these biochemical labs that the United States criminals were funding. Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, Mitt Romney, and the list goes on. Hunter Biden is now under serious investigation. Pause for 1 second and realize that the majority of what you see coming from the mainstream is actually military controlled. The same time Hunter is being investigated is the same time Trump is being indicted, which is the perfect setup for all red pills to fall like rain at the same time. Luckily, COVID wasn't as bad, as they've skewed the numbers, and the majority of those vaccines were saline. The military knew what was going on and did everything to prevent as much as they could. The rest of it is to wake us up. It wasn't fun for anyone. This is war, and it's up to you to understand who's who and the blueprint. Just think back to friends and family members who are so distant from your point of view, that are now getting closer to it by simply observing the sheer fuckery of the last 2 years. The Fed submitted. March 15th, 2020. During COVID, the Federal Reserve took a back seat to the Trump-controlled Treasury Department for the first time in 100 years. The Fed submitted and paid out all liquidity while our Treasury secured the assets. It used to be the other way around. Fast forward to a glimpse of today and the Federal Reserve has gone bankrupt. New financial systems are being created, the dollar is failing and will die fairly soon.
Here's the G7, a group of 7 of the world's advanced economies, including the US, UK, and Japan. And here's what some call the alternative from the developing world, the BRICS, formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The BRICS is trying to position itself as the voice for emerging economies and challenge Western dominance of global affairs. Its leaders are holding a summit in Johannesburg to discuss an historic expansion. More than 40 countries, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, want to join.
The expansion of BRICS could definitely boost the group's global influence.
Let's look at what a potential enlargement means for the alliance and its ambitions to shake up the global political and economic order.
The original term BRIC was actually coined by a Goldman Sachs banker, grouping these really different countries together because they were so fast growing.
The leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, and China formalized their relationship in 2009 and invited South Africa to join the alliance a year later.
They decided to take that idea in an effort to create a bit of a political and economic counterpoint to what's perceived as the Western hegemony of the global political and economic spheres.
The BRICS countries together make up more than 40% of the world's population and almost a third of the world's GDP. According to data from the International Monetary Fund, the bloc has already overtaken the G7 nations' share of the global economy on the basis of purchasing power parity. That's when the purchasing power of different currencies is equalized. Projections by Goldman Sachs show the world's economic balance shifting towards the BRICS and emerging economies. China is expected to overtake the US as the world's largest economy by 2050, with India climbing to number 3.
China and India have experienced massive growth since the BRICS were founded in 2009 and certainly have helped them swell in importance and remain relevant on the global stage.
China and Russia are pushing to enlarge BRICS. Experts say Beijing is keen to create an alternative grouping to counter the US and the West on the world stage.
China has been bullish on expanding BRICS for some time, and they're particularly keen at the moment because of the trade tensions with the US. The US looking to diversify its supply chains away from China.
Russia sees an expansion as a way to gain more international allies following its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. South Africa publicly supports the expansion, as does Brazil, but experts say behind the scenes, Brazil and India want a more measured approach.
It seems that they are concerned about the group leaning too autocratic, so they want to have very specific requirements for admission to make sure that there's a balance amongst the members and that it doesn't become sort of the autocratic G7.
More than 20 countries have formally applied to become part of BRICS, ranging from Saudi Arabia to Ethiopia, Argentina, and Indonesia. Experts say Saudi Arabia is a strong candidate as a major economic and energy power in the Middle East, with a growing role in regional diplomacy. Indonesia, with the world's 4th largest population, is another strong contender.
Indonesia, being such a large economy and important in the electrification, clean energy tech, electric vehicles, might be a logical choice.
One reason for joining the BRICS is gaining access to the bloc's new development bank. Since its founding in 2014, the bank has approved more than $30 billion in loans for development and infrastructure projects.
Access to funding from this bank, which seem to be having more favorable terms than a traditional development bank like the World Bank or the IMF, is definitely something that's attractive to a lot of countries.
The new development bank also wants to deepen the use of local currencies instead of the US dollar for trade and financing between the BRICS nations. Ultimately, experts say one of the biggest challenges for the BRICS to counter the West is to form a united voice on major global issues.
Generally, the countries have pretty diverse and diverging interests in politics, on security issues, and even relations with the US. I think the group would like to be seen as an alternative political forum to the G7 group of developed nations. Whether or not it is able to achieve that, I think, will largely depend on what countries it admits.
Executive Order 13912, March 27th, 2020. Donald Trump federalizes the National Guard and reserves to active duty because of those unaddressed national emergencies. From 2017 to March 2020, Donald Trump declared 9 national emergencies. 7 were in executive orders, all were unaddressed by Congress. This equals a military operation, a continuation of government, a destroying of the federal corporation.
Your 6-blade knife, do anything for you.
Executive Order 13919, April 30th, 2020. President Trump signed Executive Order 13919, which gives the Secretary of Defense the authority to activate the reserve components of the military to federal duty. The military generals and their commanders, and Commander-in-Chief Trump, are now in full control of our nation and have been under multiple clauses under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the Constitution, and federal law. All this implicates that Joe Biden is not the president.
Hey Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand? Hey Joe, I said where you going with that gun in your hand?
If Biden Biden was actually president, would he extend a number of these executive orders that go against his lifelong policies? Ones created by Trump specifically meant for the takedown of the cabal? This is a perfect sign that shows the military is in control of a lot of what you are seeing. Biden's admin is nothing but a continuation of government, but they're the side that's exposing their crimes to the public. They're destroying their system. They're all actors. The ones that aren't, they know what's going on. Continuation of government shows so. Biden has extended every single executive order with national emergencies and the Executive Order 13912 that federalized the National Guard and reserves to active duty. Every executive order has expiration dates, so why did he extend policies that don't align with his? Executive Order 13912 didn't set to expire until March 2022. Why did he extend it in 2021? He extended it again in 2022, which now makes the National Guard and Reserves on active duty till March 2024. The Space Force has never been uttered from Biden's mouth. The Space Force articles have never mentioned Joe Biden. The Army transferred all communications to the Space Force in August 2022 for one command. Who's that commander if Joe Biden has never been mentioned by the Space Force? Who established the Space Force as an independent military branch in 2019? Donald Trump. The Air Force did not give Biden the traditional ride into D.C. on January 20th, 2021. Guess who the Space Force is a department of? The Air Force. There's multiple documented pictures on the Flight app of Coast Guard on Navy bases and Navy helicopters on Coast Guard stations. The Coast Guard is a Department of Homeland Security during peacetime. They operate under the Navy during times of war. This implies we are at war. The Marines are a department of the Navy. That makes all military branches operating under military operation. Continuation of government, none of which recognize Biden as Commander-in-Chief. In every single National Guard article, Biden has not been mentioned, not once. Only the Secretary of Defense and/or the commanders of the brigade, battalion, or unit. Biden campaigned that he was going to shut down Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay. Why has he not revoked Executive Order 13823? Which is Donald Trump's executive order that revoked Obama's executive order to shut it down. If he was president, he would have the same powers and authority as every other president. But it's evident he doesn't, because he's not the president. In fact, he's not even alive, and we'll get to that soon. The rigged election, November 20th, 2020. How did President Trump, the military, and his administration know to write every key executive order from 2017 to 2021 with specific dates inside to be activated and enacted on after November 3rd, 2020 and after January 6th, 2021? Military has its own law, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The Constitution is the highest law in the land, backed by the military. The military came first in our nation. The military was created to make sure the government did not get too radical, hence why they stepped in. This did not just start recently. Our country isn't the country you think it's been. From 2017 to 2021, a lot of you thought that certain Trump team members, staff, administration, and military turned on him, but they didn't. It was part of an operation. They're called white hat operatives. Optics within optics. If you didn't know about the laws, or if you weren't following the laws being signed from 2017 to 2021, you were blind and fell for the bait as you did with everything you witnessed from January 6th and January 20th to present day. January 6th, 2021. The military expected the 2020 election to be rigged, but to drain the swamp, they had to let it happen. They had to show the American public this way. Mike Lindell's documentary shows the real election results, with almost every state voting for Trump. The Executive Order 13848 issued the first national emergency. Then, on January 6, 2021, Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller activated the National Guard to federal duty, as was ordered in Executive Order 13919 by President Trump. All of those actions also signified President Trump's war powers of the President via 47 U.S. Code 606, Title 10 of the United States Code, the invoking of the Insurrection Act of 1807, Title 32 of U.S. Code, extended President Trump's power as president according to those codes in Articles 2 and 4 of the Constitution. On January 6, 2021, after 2 objections, the insurrection took place. It wasn't an insurrection. It was all planned. The military was exposing the deep state. Because in our Constitution, in 3 U.S. Code 15, it tells you what was supposed to happen when those objections took place. That didn't happen. When they came back in, they just rushed right on through and counted the votes. They were supposed to go into a special chamber, go read through 3 U.S. Code 15. Congress, swamp, the rhinos and dinos broke 18 U.S. Code 2381, 2384, and 2385, and 52 U.S. Code 20511. Executive Order 13848 traps all governors, attorney generals, secretary of states, judges, and lawyers who do not uphold or apply the laws that were put into place, so they chose what side of the line they were on. To understand further, you can watch my film, The Flight of the Bronson Brothers, a group of 4 famous trumpet-playing brothers who sued Congress for not upholding their oath. Their fight still continues, and you can catch up on that fight on goodlion.tv. The deep state did in fact control the front lines with FBI operatives, getting us to enter the Capitol. I know because I am one. I faced corrupt judges, correctional officers, and lawyers who all tried to bash my spirit, but only made it stronger. These are the corrupt judges and lawyers who chose to stay on their side. They will regret doing so. This is a multi-layered operation of all the things that the swamp is being drained from. January 20th was also a very important day, as it was the funeral of Joe Biden. That's right, all right in front of our faces. Joe Biden's funeral, January 20th, 2021. President Trump received the full military and constitutional regulated inauguration ceremony with the Presidential Salute Battery, 3rd Infantry, also known as the Old Guard, with a 21-gun salute, with the playing of Hail to the Chief as he flew off in Air Force One post 11:59 and 59 seconds a.m. as the 20th Amendment specifically says a president's term is to end and begin at noon. Joe Biden had 3 cannons, 9-second intervals, 21 guns, and the first shot was a dud. So 20 guns? And this was at Arlington National Cemetery. If you go to arlingtonnationalcemetery.mil, it specifically says the 3 valiant salute is not to be confused with the 21-gun salute. Joseph Biden received a full-grade military funeral service. He didn't get to ride in Air Force One. He raised his right hand at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a violation of the 20th Amendment. What we are witnessing today is still a continuation of government, aimed to reverse the radical brainwash of propaganda on our nation. You don't just flip a switch to change a public opinion. You orchestrate an entire movie, a show, where the world becomes a stage, in order to create the proper outrage and insight, knowledge that enables people to break away from a hypnosis of division. America is like an innocent child that was kidnapped by a dark satanic cult of criminals and pedophiles, using its power to effect worldwide change in its favor. 10 years ago, not many people would be able to grasp this information, but through Trump's presidency, COVID-19, the 2020 election, January 6th and January 20th, in the deep state in Ukraine, we've woken up. We've realized blindly putting faith into government has become our greatest fault, and that paying attention matters. The last 100 plus years, Americans were sold to a corporation, losing the true meaning of what being an American is and was all about. Many naysayers out there around the world know nothing about being American, while at the same token, there are just as many patriots in every country of the world because they too have national pride in their country and can see that ridding the deep state of the US is ridding the deep state of the world. You see, we all have something to unite for. We may fear a united one-world government, as we should, but inviting a one-world patriotism is what can unite us all together, rejoining in the fact that we all have our individualism, but our collectivism is what makes us stronger as individuals. Many people stop short at their brief, "we're all on the same side" rhetoric, yet can one truly watch this entire movie and still believe that? The thirst for knowledge, the hunger to understand, when lost, becomes the closing time for both heart and mind, and it becomes evident. Those are the ingredients that make a doom and gloomer. They stopped their research long ago. But not you. You didn't. You now have the tools to understand everything you are seeing happen around the world. It will take thought. It will take your own research. It may take open-minded conversations, painful ones, but together we are collectively the audience of the greatest show on earth, the Great Awakening. Keyboard warriors, you know what to do.
Forget the day and dream of a girl I used to know.